Hi everyone, JS here. This video is a guide that was mainly made for A to C members, but also can be used for anyone who's interested in optimizing your gear for mostly GVG, but also PvE. I'm going to show you how to import your gear from Where Winds Meet's website into this website called Where Winds Math, and also export the JSON file from that website to send it to people so that they can check your build for you. And I'll also be showing how to read the stat priorities and how to prioritize the stats for optimum damage. So the first thing you want to do in game is to make sure that you're using the correct set of armor that you want to check. So make sure to swap into the correct build. In this case, for this example, I'll be using my pure healer build. Right, and you might have to wait a while for it to be saved onto your profile. And if it's not updated, you need to just wait for 5 to 10 minutes while the server updates to save your current gear set. The next thing is take note of the current breakthrough level that I'm on. I'm on breakthrough 15, and more importantly, max level 95. So if you're watching this in the far future and your stats are different, please adjust it accordingly, because I'm on breakthrough 15 with level 95, so some things might change. So after all that is done, you can go to your Where Wins Math website, and they will first ask you which build you're using. I'm going to use the Bell Strike Splendor because I'll be looking at someone else's build today and going through their stats. Jadeware and all these you can just select based on what you're using. These are the ones that I'm going to use. And finish setup. Okay. With that done, we are now going to import our gear. And what we need to do is we click this button, import all gear from the game, and they'll give you instructions. And it's very clear. You just go to the Where Winds Meet dashboard, which is this one. All right, you log in. It's the official website, and you just select your character, and you can now import. You can see that my gear set has not been saved because I just switched it. But and if you're having this problem, you can try closing your game and opening or leaving the area. It should update this. So once you have this done, it says that you need to drag this to your bookmark bar. Right now, you need to drag it to the bookmarks bar, and you can click on it. The script will run on the bookmark, and you can just copy this to your clipboard. You go back to this window and you paste it here, and it will show all your gear and all the roles. You import it, and now all your gear is imported with all the proper stat lines. The only thing that's not included is actually your arena attunements, but your PvE attunements should be there. So just take note that those arena attunements are missing if they're important for your damage. It should not affect the gear rolling, like which stats are prioritized if you're missing your arena attunements. If you want to import a profile from someone who sent you their JSON profile, you just click through your file and you import it, and it should load all your gear sets and your inner ways. So now I'm going to go through how you're going to look at the stats and decide what you need to do to your build to improve on the DPS, like what stat lines you need to remove, what to swap it out for. So the two main things you need to be looking out for is your character stats and your stat priority. Right now, by default, your both sets should be none. And even though you do have a set, it will be defaulted at none. Um, it might be different from you, but make sure to select the one that you're using. Make sure that also that your bow set is actually has a set. In this case, with this level 95 patch, every ring and bow has a set bonus that you can change. For mine, it's crit rate, but you can change it to affinity or precision. Mostly affinity and precision is what most all people will be using. And you can change it as many times as you want, and there's no cooldown. It's just that it costs 50 Jade. So try to do this at the end of your when after you do all your upgrades so that you don't switch it back and forth when it's not needed. So looking at the stats of this person, this is not my build, this is someone else's Bell Strike build. You can see that his stat his precision, crit rate, and affinity are too high. The first one, precision, is too high because it should not be at 100%. Ideally, for Bell Strike, you want your precision to be 85%. Be 85%. And in this case, his effective crit rate is 100%. That means that he has too high of a precision percentage. This number over here would correspond with what you see in white in game. What I mean by white is this number over here is white and this is your orange line. So the numbers that I'm going to be changing is based on this white line over here. So if you go back here, you can see that his precision is 132, and if you want it to be exactly at 100, it would be 115.7. But even that is too high. Ideally, we want Bell Strike's precision to be at 85%, and that will be at 94%. Right? So this person has a lot of lines of precision to drop. He is at 132 minus his 94%. So he has 38% extra. And if you divide that by 6.6, which is the maximum precision line, can drop about 5 to 6 lines of precision from his gear and swap it to anything else that is better, right? So I'm going to drop his precision to 94%. Maybe I'll drop it a bit lower just to show that I'll do at 88. Just to show that even at 88% precision, his precision is still very low. It's still the lowest of all the stats that are considered alright. Right, even momentum is better, even though his affinity is overcapped. Right, so with precision fixed, now let's take a look at his affinity. His affinity is currently at 40%, but there's also still a bit of overcap here. Ideally, you want your affinity to be the white number to be at 57.5. With this, you can still argue that you could have one more line of momentum and it still be good, right? But so if you're slightly below, please push it above 57.5 to get your 40% effective affinity. If it's already above, if it's really like at this point and above, let's say yours is like 57.7, it's okay. You don't need to do anymore. You can see that momentum even drops below crit at this point. So just leave it at 57.5 is the ideal amount you want to have. You can have one more piece of one more additional momentum, that's fine. If you are just slightly below 57.5, like 57.4 or even 56, you definitely need one more line of um affinity or momentum. So in this case, you can see that they prioritize momentum first, and this is for 58.9. So you want it to be really as close as 40% as possible. So this one, affinity is even not too good. They still want you to have momentum, but that's the highest uh percentage gain in terms of stat priority. So this person has about 57.5, right? So it's 62.11 minus 57.5. He can lose about 1.5 lines of affinity from his current gear, right? And you can see that the maximum precision, affinity is 3.6%, right? That's the 1.5 from 4.6 affinity extra he has, right? When it comes to crit, you can see that let me drop it first. So I do 57.5. When it comes to crit, you can see that the crit priority is at 11, below momentum, below all martial arts, below max bell strike attribute, and it's providing 1.07. So you can afford to trade any crit for any of these lines on top here. And now let's go into our gear. Okay, so for the left hand side gear, meaning your weapon side, these four pieces, you want it ideally you want the first line to always be maximum fist because that's the stat line that contributes the most damage in terms of tuned stats, right? It's 1.38. So these two pieces, the two weapons, one momentum, one bell strike, you ideally want to have it in max. And if you want to compare, when it comes to momentum, if you're already at max affinity, you definitely do not want momentum. And you can get momentum and affinity from other sources. So that's why you ideally want your maximum fizz. And for maximum bell strike, you can see that it is 1.17% damage gain compared to the 1.38 damage gain. It feels like a very small percentage, but if you compare the gain between the two, um, 1.38 minus 1.17, it is 0.21. And if you compare that with bell strike's damage gain, you're losing out on 80% more efficiency on the max fist stat, right? Meaning you have gotten 80% more damage if you just swap your bell strike with your fist damage. 18% more gain lah in this case, not 18% more damage in total. It's just that it's 18% better. Max fist is 18% better than max bell strike, right? So it's quite significant if you consider it all the stat lines, right? So that's why you want to start with max. But of course, gear is pure energy, and you just take the best five lines that you can get, right? So this one you can't change much, but this piece is not particularly too good because, as I said, precision is kind of a dead stat. You do have to drop it over here. For affinity builds, you really want to stick to that 85%. But for crit builds, you do want that precision, so that one is different. So these you can afford to drop precision and probably change your momentum line. For infinity, it really depends whether you can drop it on other pieces of gear. But if you get like power, is a good replacement for this. Momentum is also not a bad line because since it's okay to get it on one of your four lines, but not for the first row, right? If you do not know, the first yeah, you cannot roll two lines with the same stat, but the exception is the first line. The first line bypasses that rule because it does not count as one of the four stats when you're rolling. So it means if this was maximum fizz, you can roll maximum fizz again because it's and that's your double max fizz line. Alright. So precision has to go for this one. Moving on. For your right hand weapon, you have your bell strike. So again, max fizz. Precision has to go. And this min bell strike is also really bad. Because of how affinity works, you only want maximum max damage. And minimum bell strike is at 0.33%, which is the 21st is all the way down at the 21st priority. So never it's kind of a dead stat in this case, right? Another line that you're missing is the God line, which is this one, Art of Sword boost, and this is at 2.17%, which is um almost twice the amount of a bell strike. All right, so it's worth 2 lines or 1.8 of a line if you want to consider it. So take that into your consideration when when you're looking at gear. If you have a what you call that, art of sword damage, it can contribute to 2 lines worth of good stats. So if you get maybe an offline like this with your max sword damage, it'll be worth it to pick it up, right? And next, moving on to the disc and the pendant. For these two, for Bell Strike, you can see that all martial arts boost is only at 1.09%, which is above crit, but in this case, slightly below momentum. I would just say that momentum really depends on your affinity. So don't look at your own stats to see whether you should have it or not. I mean, if you have it, it's okay. It's the same damage contribution. So it should just be below, slightly below max spell strike and with max fizz and power on top of it. So um you can have it as your fifth line because if you count the number of stats that you want on your disc and your pendant, you want max fizz, you want power, so that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And your fifth line can be crit if you don't need more momentum. But if let's say you are now above, let's say you have hit the maximum 40%, momentum goes all the way down. You can see over here, and you don't need it anymore. So that means you should just take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 lines are what you want. But if you can get double max fizz, then it's just 1, 2 max fizz, 1 power, 1 bell strike, and 1 martial arts boost. This can obviously be replaced with crit anytime. So if you're not lucky with the god line of martial arts, you can have crit instead with 2 max, 1 power, 1 bell strike, and 1 crit. All right, that's for the disc and the pendant. And for these two, you can see that again, there's a precision line here. Be careful about your momentum and your affinity. You can probably afford to drop it. And this piece does not have max fizz. So this is a piece of gear that you can change really easily. Um, Try to get double max fizz and all the lines that I just told you about. This one is honestly pretty good. There's not much you need to change here, so you should prioritize on your disc. For helmet, again precision. Swap it out for affinity or crit. You don't need any precision, but this one is also okay. The only issue is just the precision, right? And of course, you could drop crit uh for power in this case, or you could drop affinity. So the helmet slot seems to be a very difficult slot to get good lines for. So just try your best. If you get the first thing you should do is just swap the precision. Hopefully, you can get a better helmet. For your chest, again, this is pretty good. You got 2 affinities, which is really hard to roll. But again, precision. So this is one dead stat over here. And if you take a look at your precision, right, even though my precision is considerably lower than the 85%, it is still way at the bottom, even below momentum, right? And this is below all the min attribute of stats that you don't want to roll, but it at least is 0.8%. So you should not really consider precision. And that's it. Right. So this one line over here. For Greaves and Bracer, ideally you want the first line to be power, and you also want a god line on them. The god line you want is actually the increase bonus versus player units, which is this one over here that I have. Right, the maximum should be 2.6%. And it also works for healers because you can see here that the game describes it as increases all damage and healing done to players. So, um, and if you look at the stat priority, it is quite high. It's the second highest, just below max fizz at 1.32. So this is a line that you should get, right? So you should I mean it depends whether you can get power. Power is not too high on the priority list. It's 1.23. So this is also quite high. So you should try my bad, you should definitely try to get power in it. But if you have affinity or in it, it's okay if you have the god line. right? So affinity, max fizz, max spell strike, god line, and maybe momentum or affinity or crit also is fine, right? But ideally you want power, max fizz, god line, and one of max spell strike for both of these, right? For your greaves, you don't really have to change this for now. Not a priority because honestly, this is really good, minus the power. But for this one, you have a power, but you have two bad lines. You have precision and you have min max strike. So this is what I'll try to change out. Um, Unfortunately, you really cannot afford any more affinity. So this one you might have to focus on the power version. Uh, I would advise that you go to your look for purples and look and make sure that you haven't accidentally recycled power lines, especially if it's purple or gold. Even if it's blue, right, you still can roll it and you still can relay it afterwards. So please do not throw away your right hand side. Right hand side being these three pieces. This is your left hand side, your weapon pieces. Because you can always just relay it upwards even if the first line is a blue power line. So that's how you ensure that you get as many rolls as possible for your gear. So like this is a piece of gear that's purple that I relate because the initial stat lines were like blue or purple, so it helps me increases the percentage to 75%. Yeah, so that's one trick you could do. And if you want to check whether you have um gear that you might have accidentally recycled, you can always go to retrieve gear. There you can see here that there are certain things that you could take back, like for example, this crit, maybe if I want it, I could take it back. But most of these I've already tried rolling on them. So that's why you can see that some of them have been rolled on. And I didn't even use my golden tuning shells. You can do this, then if you get good lines, you can just relay it and improve each stat line. Right? That's only if you don't have enough gold lines to roll on. I mean gold shells to roll on. Yep. So that's for because these two are the hardest to get power on. That's why you should use this kind of purple gear to upgrade. And it's not too bad. It affects your survivability because it drops your defense and your max HP. So if you take a look here, 1.4 4.1 and 16 fizz death versus this 4.6k versus 18. It's not it's not too significant, but you wouldn't want to do it for your left hand side because the fizz attack roll will be dropped instead. So it's not worth it. Right? But for this side, if you get five good lines, it's definitely worth it. So roll your purples. Right? And you also should do the same for these two pieces. Right? So that's about it. For the last part of the video, I'm going to show you the retuning recommendations and also the modulation analysis. This modulation analysis is to show you whether should you modulate your gear. Even though it's already at level 91, you can modulate it just so that you can bring the stats up. If let's say you rolled low legendary rolls, or maybe if some of them are purples, your first line, they'll calculate and tell you whether is it worth it to relay your gear back into 91 so that you can increase the stats up to 95% of the max. So how you want to start off is that with your current pieces of gear, you need to first select which one that you have done your re-rolling on, right? In this case, of course, if you could, you would have selected precision. But if you already, if let's say you had to re-roll something else other than precision, maybe like affinity, you can select that. And under here, under the re-roll calculator, you need to select your bell strike path, and it will tell you whether there's anything worth re-rolling into. And here you can see that there's nothing worth re-rolling into because you need the affinity from this piece of gear, because I already reduced the affinity from the calculator. So you probably will have to reset everything, go back to your gear analyzer, and now you can see that, oh, if I swap it into max fizz, I will get 1.4% because my affinity is useless in this case. They also show you the percentage increase if you try to re-roll your attunements for your sixth line, the PVE or the PV, mostly the PVE attunements only, because this website only does PVE attunements, which is the physical penetration, right? Next, we'll be looking at the gear comparison. And I'll be looking at the bracer that we were looking at just now, the one with power and two bad lines, min bell strike and precision. In this case, affinity is also pretty bad. So what I have here is a comparison, a piece of gear that I just selected random stats of, affinity, max phase, momentum to match these ones. But instead of the first line power, we have first line affinity. Like I said, sometimes giving up power for a good rolled item is still good. You can see here that this item has a 2.28% increase, and this is how you compare gear. You can do a screenshot where you can take a picture of your new piece of gear and you can import it using this method. Here they have an example. You can even copy paste it. You don't have to save the file. It's just control V. All right. And in this case, make sure to also put in the same attunement into your sixth line so that you can match it, because you can always just move it over just so that you can see what's the actual difference, percentage difference for the five line of stats. Right. So in this case, you can see there are a few things you need to look at. It's telling you what you should retune on this piece of item. So they're asking me to retune the bamboo cut. Maybe this bamboo cut, I did not retune it. Maybe I had to retune it to get these nice four lines. And maybe the one that I retuned was the maximum bell strike, right? So here it says that, oh, if you retune this again from bell strike into crit, you get a small improvement of 0.09. This is really little and probably not worth doing it. Reroll path sealed bind. So they are recommending moving into using silk bind path reroll, and what you're trying to get is crit because silk bind path has crit. This one is just some min maxing. You don't need to worry about too much about it. It's just see which whether is it worth it to reroll. In this case, the answer is not really. You can see that crit. Oh, crit has yeah, it's really little. Power is also an increase, so that's not too bad. Moving on, we are looking at showing you how much damage you gain if you try to re-roll your um charge skill damage to get a higher percentage, higher than 4.5. I think it can go slightly higher. I'm not sure what's the maximum for this. And if you take a look on the left hand side, you can see that this is the modulation thing again. This is similar to your gear analyzer telling you what you can get if you modulate. Here it says that you get 0.26%, which is probably not worth it unless you have a lot of spare gear. So you can see here that it's slightly higher. I'm not sure why. Um, but they're saying that it's good to modulate to get this amount of boost. They did a calculation for you. And here they're also telling you what to retune on this piece of gear if you haven't already retuned. If you want to go and analyze your current piece of gear, go back to the gear analyzer, the one that I was showing you just now. Yep. So this is for gear comparison. Don't need to really look too much on the left hand side, more on the right hand side and seeing what you can do to improve this piece of gear. Then you can change the stats once you retune it and compare again. In this case, it's a definite win. You want to swap these two around.